crypto-clothesline. We're glad to be here with you. Hanging out the crypto laundry. Getting all the crypto info for you. Crypto Clothesline.
Hello, Amy Rose.
Hello, Abheeti. How's your week?
My week has been intense and full on and exciting, and quite a bit of interesting feedback about week 1 from CryptoGat. Ivan.
I am so excited that we're on to episode 2 of our interview with CryptoGat, who is an amazing influencer that was involved in cryptocurrency and is still involved in cryptocurrency, but was also involved in a pump and dump scheme, which has seen him from 70,000 followers on Twitter fall from grace.
And so a pump and dump or market manipulation is basically where, in this case, a cryptocurrency, a low cap, i.e. a cheap cryptocurrency, is built up artificially. Influencers are able to get their public, their audience to jump in and buy too because they trust them. And once it's hit the top price and the people within the inner circle have made their money, boom, the price crashes as they sell out. And often what happens is the public are left wanting. They're the ones who end up wearing the loss.
And in episode 1, we do talk about this pump and dump. We talk about market manipulation, and we had a few guests on as well. First, we had Martin McGinty, who talked about market manipulation.
And we had Kim Gibson-Newton, who also put her slant on market manipulation.
And then we talked about the effects on CryptoGat when it came to what happened with the community and how we got hacked and how we got attacked. And we had an expert, Thomas Derej, come on and talk about what's happening in the crypto space when it comes to hacking.
Yeah, it's cybersecurity basically. So in episode 2, we are going to go deeper into the risks for young people of getting involved in the space. We didn't mention, but he is only 23 years old, CryptoGat, so a huge influencer with over 70,000 people following him, and yet he's only 23.
And we talk about, because he's only 23, he's fresh. He's actually in a space where, like a lot of young people, they want to test things out. They want to see what's going on in this particular space. And so what happened was he got involved in this market manipulation scheme. So we had Matt Morrison from Blockbox, who's also another guest that we've had on this week to talk about market manipulation.
We also spoke to Nikki Ashby from High Profit Media, and she talked about the effects of media in a negative way, like how they impact your social life. She spoke about the fact that even with 70,000 followers, if each of those 70,000 went and had a cranky conversation with 10 people, there were 700,000 people bagging you around the world, and how that can really be a crushing on a person's life.
And then talking even furthermore in our interview, we had another special guest, Dr. Sophie Henshaw, who specializes in bullying and online bullying. And she came on to talk about the impact of someone being bullied, and it often results in suicide. And so it's something that's going on right now because everything is digitalized. It's something that's going on, and it's really hard to control because kids are at the center of this bullying, basically. A lot of people can come on and attack you, and there's nothing to stop them.
CryptoGat also talks about the fact that he was as traumatic and as devastating as this was, and he completely owns the fact that he made a mistake. And by the way, the pump and dump didn't go through. It didn't go to fruition, as Amy Rose said. But he talks about this horrible situation, but how that has allowed him to make a fresh start. And he talks about some of his favorite blockchain projects.
But first, let's have a listen to what Matt Morrison had to say from Blockbox about his perception of market manipulation in the crypto space right now.
So hi, Matt. Welcome to Crypto Clothesline.
Yeah, cheers. Thanks for having me.
We've been discussing it in the podcast, market manipulation. Can you comment on how common you think that is within the cryptocurrency sphere?
I think it's very common. There's certain ways that the market is manipulated. It's highly unregulated at the moment. It's kind of a bit of the Wild West. There's certain ways you have your pump and dump groups, you've got your whales, even exchanges themselves are all trying to work the system to their advantage.
And how does that work with the exchanges?
So basically they've got access to all the cryptos on their books. So if they have their own positions, it doesn't take much. If they've got the funds and the know-how, it doesn't take much to move it. Whether or not it's common knowledge or out there or whatnot, you can see it happening, especially with whales as well. They'll use the exchanges, putting up buy and sell walls.
So does that mean, say, for example, I go in and I buy, $100 worth of Bitcoin, for argument's sake, that gets thrown into a pool, or is that actually in my own account? Does that mean that the whales have access to my account, or does it mean that my Bitcoin is all pooled together until such time as I move it off the exchange?
So it's in the exchange. It's kind of like an order book. You got your buyers and your sellers, kind of like a normal exchange. A lot of the whales will actually buy their Bitcoin or crypto OTC or over the counter, so it doesn't actually affect market price. So they make their positions when it's low, and then they'll drive the price up and start selling out as they go.
All right, so they're driving the price up. Other people are freaking out, thinking that they're missing out, and the classic FOMO, and they start to buy in. And at some point, someone somewhere decides, right, we're going to drop it now and sell everything out.
Yeah, it can even work the other way. Yeah, so they can drive the price down by obviously putting up the buy or sell walls in the direction they want to go, and people FOMO out.
So we're looking at shorts and longs, basically.
Yes, basically.
Selling both ways, making money in both directions.
Correct, yes. And being so highly volatile market too, and it is, you can move the market with not much money, to be honest, or much crypto.
And so in terms of young people coming onto the scene, say your classic, 16 to 20-year-olds who may not be particularly well versed in trading. They are excited about crypto, the volatility, all the media coverage it's getting, good and bad, and say these crazy promises that some public figure might be making in some social media platforms. What would be your advice to those people, if they're even listening, in terms of not getting burnt in this pump and dump situation, in this market manipulation?
Just don't chase the pumps. They'll see it on the exchanges that something's happening. They'll think they're missing out, and they'll try to jump on it and take the ride. But by then they're too late. They're bought at all-time highs or highs for that cycle, and the people who've orchestrated it, they'll sell out, and they're left holding a coin that's worth a lot less than they got in.
So Matt made it very clear how market manipulation works, and the fact that you need education. It still keeps coming back to doing your due diligence and doing your research before jumping on any kind of promise.
And he also talks about how the exchanges are doing it. How it's not just guys and girls in the crypto space deciding to throw a Bitcoin at a pump and dump scheme. It's exchanges, and I'm not going to name any exchanges, but there are some that are under investigation right now for market manipulation.
Yeah, Sophie Amat, one of our previous guests, is actually doing a blog about that right now, so I promised to share that with everybody.
That would be amazing.
Further to that, we had a chat with Nikki Ashby about the impact of media. Let's have a listen.
Good morning, Nicole, and welcome to Crypto Clothesline.
Good morning, and thanks for having me. This is very exciting.
Could you tell us a little bit about what you do, please?
Sure thing. So what I do is predominantly teach small business owners how to generate their own publicity in order to grow their credibility, their profile, and profitability, and it's quite easily done. And then I also do a bit of PR and helping bigger businesses get into the media that don't have the time to do it themselves.
And so when you talk about free publicity and what have you, are you talking about helping people get into the media?
Yeah, so I think traditional media, because nowadays a lot of people, when you say media, they just assume social media. That's how we're being conditioned. But I dabble in the space of TV, radio and print, and helping people get interviewed on whether it's a big TV show or smaller local media. It all adds to, growing your profile, getting out there and getting in front of the people who need to hear your message the most.
And so in terms of, say, somebody who is in their early 20s, like we talked about the fact that we had an interview with CryptoGat, this man called Ivan, and he has a following of over 70,000 people on social media. So, even if he got into traditional print media, that's still going to have a full-blown effect, isn't it, in the social media realm?
Yeah, definitely. And I think with the younger generation too, because a lot of their world is social media, and the more likes you have, the better that is for your ego and your profile. That's something that really matters for that generation. That it's a great thing for them to go out and get those likes and to get those followers, but potentially without realizing the full ramifications of what that's going to have when something goes wrong, like it did for Ivan, because that's not something that is really talked about. It's just go out there, get your followers, become an influencer, and then you're wonderful. But nobody's there to talk about the downfall and how that can be really tragic and impact one's life.
Could you talk a little bit about the effect of a negative media attention or negative media impact on the personal life then of a public figure or an influencer?
Yeah, well, if you look at, anybody that's in the media. So if we have a look, for example, at Barnaby Joyce, so an Australian, he was the Deputy Prime Minister, and had a bit of a falling from grace of recent times, came out and said he'd had an affair, that one of his staff is pregnant, has now had his baby. He's on stress leave, or he's on leave from his position, and was just interviewed on Channel 7 here in Australia. And the fallout of that has had quite an impact as well. People are saying that it was a load of rubbish and that he's a politician and his values are all twisted up and he's a family man. I think he's got 3 or 4 kids with his first wife, and he shouldn't be in a position of power in the country if he can't keep it in his pants, basically. So the impact on him in terms of, he was the Deputy Prime Minister. People now mistrust him. There's a lot of value judgment on him for what he's done, and he's fallen from grace. And this has impacted his career. And so this can happen all of the time, and you've got to have a really thick skin to be a public figure. You have to know, you've got to have some nous about, what am I going to say? How is it going to affect me? What are the implications if something does go wrong? And do I have crisis management in place, particularly if you've got 70,000 followers? I mean, that's intense. And if you think, if there's one comment that somebody doesn't like, or, with Ivan having this fall from grace, and those 70,000 people all go and tell, 10 people about it, then all of a sudden it's out to 700,000 people. So the flow-on effect can be huge, and it can be really damaging and difficult to get back from. So you've really got to be thinking clearly about, what am I saying, what am I doing, and what's my exit strategy as well.
So Nikki says that nobody's talking about the negative impacts of media and the effect that it can have on someone.
And that it's really important to get your message really clear before you speak to the media, and how easy it is to get misinterpreted as well.
But isn't that hard to do if you're in social media? Because everything you write, it's not like you've got to wait a day till it gets published in a newspaper, or it has to go through an editor, to make sure that it's all kosher. On social media, which is where CryptoGat is, it's out there, it's there forever.
She talked about the fact that when something goes wrong, you don't act, and if you don't act according to the wish of the masses, you can basically fall from your platform of popularity, and it can cost you dearly. And not just in physical dollars or Bitcoin or Ether or whatever. It can actually mean that you're under attack, you're under threat, which is exactly what CryptoGat experienced. She goes on to say that nobody's really talking about what happens when it all goes wrong, and it can be really tragic and impact on one's life.
And you know what the real sad thing is, and we talked to CryptoGat about this in the interview, the problem here is, like, it's a public resume, it's a public CV, and if you are in the media spotlight non-stop, there is a mark against his name forever, and it can't be removed. That's something that Nikki talked about as well. You need to have an exit strategy. You need to know how you're going to cope when something like this happens, when you have a media attack, basically, a social media attack from your followers.
You have a social media attack, but also a hacking attack where basically your private life is completely tapped into. So let's have a listen to part 2 with CryptoGat.
What would be your advice to a young guy, Abheeti's son, for example, who's a teenager, he's about to go into the space and join 150 Telegram groups? What would be your advice before being offered to go into one of these rooms and be involved in making what essentially would be a lot of money if you decided to do a bit of manipulation? What would you say to a kid?
My biggest thing is the education aspect. I would say make sure that anything you're doing, you know what you're getting involved with. Don't just jump into something because it looks really good. Make sure that, you talk to other people about it, especially if you're a kid, you should talk to your parents about it. They might not understand cryptocurrency, but they'll understand more than you how the market works, and they can take a look at something and see if it's scammy pretty quickly. If you're a kid, you don't always want to go and ask your parents things or other people things, but that's really going to be your best way to protect yourself. If you see something that you like, just ask a friend, maybe a friend that's older than you or a parent. Just say, hey, I really like this. Would you take a look at it? What do you think of it? And not only is that going to help you get a second opinion, that's going to get, another person involved in the space. Do
you wish that you had have done that? Maybe had a conversation with a friend, or did you? Just to say, what do you think? Is it all right? Or
one of the problems was there was a bunch of people, that I was already working with in there, and you can't blame them for it, but it just makes it feel, safer. When you have people that you've been working with that are all talking in there, saying the same things, it almost gives you a comfort zone. And that's, again, one of the problems. I fell for the exact thing that I preach people not to do.
Is that relying on their information, or what do you mean when you say that?
It was just their opportunity. I didn't really look into it much. I'm not going to blame it, but, I didn't have a lot of time. I was being stretched a lot of different ways in different jobs. It was a too good to be opportunity. And instead of, looking into it, I just kind of started chiming in a Telegram group before I really did my due diligence.
I have to say that I've spoken with a few people and they would do the same thing. I personally wouldn't, but they've been in the market for a long time, longer than you. And they're like, it happens all the time. This is actually just how it is. Like, you don't need to get emotional about it. This is just what happens. Heaps of people are doing it. So I get that it was a safe sort of, your friends are there. That's what they're doing. It feels very similar to when you're in high school and all your friends are doing drugs, all your friends are doing this, they're all fine. Let's go out drinking. Let's do that. It feels like the same risks, the same sort of consequences. I just feel like it's just a bit of a minefield and it's dangerous. So that's why I want to bring awareness.
That's actually such a good analogy, to be completely honest. It was kind of like that, there was something that no one's really tried. Everyone else does it all the time. Why is everyone else doing it? You almost want to, you want to get a feel for it. And unfortunately, it was a bad decision. And it's difficult not to give into that kind of pressure, especially, when you're under so much stress for a really extended period of time, essentially.
I think that's a really good point that you're making up about stress and time and the pressure that we're all under, because if you look at, say, Noam Chomsky's work, I wish those words would come back to me. What does he talk about? Manufacturing consent. That whole notion that we're on like this little mouse wheel, just like these little mice going round and round and round and round and round, and we're busy, and we're working, and there's just so little time to stop and think, whether you're thinking about your navel or whether you're thinking about your trade, or whether you're thinking about whether this is a safe chat room to be in or whatever. I've just had an example recently where I just haven't been listening to my daughter and it completely exploded. But this little voice has been coming at me for months. And because it's mummy busyness, busy, I just haven't stopped and listened. And I think it's a real issue of our modern culture.
Yeah, I mean, going from someone that's just in college to someone being in college on top of that working like 16, not 16, but 10, 12 hours a day on crypto, I was under stress I had never been under before, especially when I had finals, tests, other things like that. And I was just exposed to, such extreme stress for a period of months that I was just making decisions I wouldn't have if I had a clear mind.
Right.
What really sucks is, let's just say that the internet is your CV or your resume or whatever. This is a mark on you that, in my opinion, on my resume, if I had a public resume like you, it would be, I'm not going to incriminate myself, but it would not be beautiful, and it really sucks that you made a mistake and it's there forever, which is why, young people, they're making mistakes all the time and it's not stuck on them forever. But in your case, it absolutely is. Do you think that you could advocate for some sort of change to protect people in the future, considering you know so much about it?
The problem is I don't know how you would really protect people from it, considering this has been something going on since the start of time, really, whether it's financial markets or any other market, we had that like tulip mania. So, markets are always going to be manipulated. The only thing that you can do is try and educate people as much as possible to make their own decision.
Yeah, I honestly feel it comes down to parents taking personal responsibility and modeling that behavior to their children, because if we actually stop and take responsibility for our words, for our actions, for our thoughts, for our beliefs, and really unpeel those layers of the onion right down to the core, then we are all sovereign beings. But as long as we're constantly pointing to someone else as being the reason for our downfalls or our faults or our issues or problems, then it's a constant sending away of that opportunity to actually take that responsibility on yourself.
It's always easier to try and pass off that responsibility and to blame someone else. This trade went poorly. It's not my fault. It's because this person didn't give me the right information, or it's because this person manipulated it. You got to be able to take the blame for what you've done, essentially. And that's the only way you're going to learn from things. When I first started to trade, I was blaming other people. I was following a lot of other people's calls. And when something went wrong, you don't know why. It wasn't your decision. You were just following someone else. But when you actually make the decision yourself, you're able to, learn from it and adapt to future situations.
So when you talked about the CV or the internet being Ivan's CV, I also wonder if that actually just gets if there's the opportunity for that to be completely switched around, because I find that you're very authentic, you're very open. As you mentioned before, you've completely owned the mistake you made. You're taking responsibility for the fact that you were in the wrong place at the wrong time, potentially with the wrong people, some of which may have been, I don't know if they were wrong or right, but, my point being that I just wonder if once this does sort of blow over and the major hurt of this passes, that you're not going to be some sort of person that people continue to look up to because of your authenticity and your honesty.
It's really interesting, the way that different people have reacted to it. And it is unfortunate that it is on the internet. It's not going to go away. There's nothing I can really do about that. But something really interesting was the way that different people reacted to it. You have the random people online that are so angry, such hateful comments. And then you have, the people that have been around the space online that send me messages like, this stuff happens all the time, it's going to blow over. And you have the actual people that don't work online that I work with, and they're like, you have nothing to sweat. It looks really bad. I know it's going to be horrible for a couple weeks, but this is stuff that's going on everywhere, not just in this space. And so, the more educated someone is about markets, and especially the cryptocurrency market, the easier they reacted to it. They were so much less surprised. And so it just goes back to that education aspect. Again, someone new to the market, just randomly online, maybe on Twitter, they get so angry and they love to just hate on people for anything. And I think a big thing of it is the current state of the market played into it as well. A lot of people are losing money right now, and they were, especially when this happened. The market was dropping really bad. People were just angry. And, they saw an opportunity to take out some anger. I mean, it wasn't just me, I've seen the general, sentiment of Twitter change so drastically over the last few months, as people have been watching the market, drop.
One of my favorite sayings is, let those without sin cast the first stone. Sort of like the people in glass houses shouldn't throw stones. Like, everyone here in the world has made some big mistakes. And to stand there, especially because these messages are coming from your followers, people who have followed you for so long, who turn around and throw a stone and don't think about, hey, that actually could have been me, or hey, that actually, something similar to that happened to me and I was a bit of a dick in the past, or something, It's just really sad that people take that immediate judgment and start ripping someone down.
Especially if they haven't actually made any losses as a result of that particular action.
It's also, I've never met these people in person. They don't actually know who I am. So it's pretty surprising. But, now that I've actually come out and started to talk about this and the things that I've experienced because of it, I have some people that are messaging me and apologizing for what they've said. They didn't realize the impact it had. And, this isn't something that I wanted to talk about immediately just because of the things that were going on, with the hacking. Especially, I was so scared to write anything anywhere for weeks. I didn't want to come out and talk. I wasn't sure what dangers essentially I was still in.
Are you feeling out of danger now?
Yeah, I do feel a lot better now. I keep talking about all the stress that I had. It was a horrible situation for it to happen, but this actually allowed me to kind of get a fresh start. A lot of the jobs I was doing, they parted ties with me pretty quickly when this all happened. Once the first person came out and said we're no longer associated with them, everyone followed suit pretty quickly. And, at the time, it was devastating. I mean, it was just like one person did it, everyone else almost had to do it. And, I understand why they did it. It was a little surprising, some of them, but, it gave me this opportunity to clean my slate. I was being pulled in so many directions. I was so busy. I had no time for my personal life at all. And so now I kind of have this opportunity to focus in on what I actually want to do, the things that I got into the space for, mostly, more of the technology focused stuff rather than trading. And I can choose the jobs that I actually want to do. And then, I'm going to have a lot less stress. This is the least amount of stress I've had in maybe 8 months. And on top of that, I'm going to be able to, really handpick the things I want to move forward with.
So what sort of things are you looking to become involved with? What sort of projects would make you happy?
I'm doing a lot more consulting and advising. I don't want to be producing content 12 hours a day. I want to step away from the, influencer thing, just because I just went through such a bad experience with it, seeing how people react to the slightest mistake. And, I worked so hard to put out content to try and help people for so long, and I understand I did something wrong, but if that's the way that you're going to react to the slightest mistake, it's not worth my stress.
Absolutely. So you're still going to have that Twitter account and you're still going to have the followings, but you're probably just not going to be so hardcore on it. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, it's going to be more focused on, long-term opportunities. I'm going to definitely step back from the day trading. It's going to focus on major news events, for both coins and the space as a whole, on top of more educational stuff. I really like doing the educational stuff. That was my favorite part.
I was going to say, what sort of projects are you excited about now? Not from the perspective of making money necessarily, but say blockchain and all these different humanitarian applications. Are there any particular crypto-related projects that you're really fond of just because of the great changes they're making in the world?
Yeah, so there's one called Blockchain for Good, and they're essentially, like a blockchain charity. And this is one of the biggest use cases I see out of blockchain is actually for charities, because you are going to have more control of seeing where funds go. And one of the biggest problems they have with charity is that, you donate $100, you don't know where any of it goes really. There's no way to actually track from my donation how much money is actually going to, say animals that need it. Because obviously they have so many costs and they're kind of lucrative. And so, blockchain can really help charities as far as transparency. Someone's going to feel a lot more comfortable donating money when they know, okay, 10% of it has to go to our management and overhead, but we can guarantee you that 90% will actually go to the people who need it, or, whatever cause we're helping. And you can track this through blockchain. We can prove it to you.
Yeah, I love that too. So Blockchain for Good is one of your faves?
Yeah, that's one of my favorites. And then there's a few other projects I'm working with. I can't really talk about them right now, but they're mostly protocols just to enhance blockchain. It's not like they're trying to create their own currencies, but they're actually trying to, solve some of the existing problems blockchain has.
Oh, that'll be nice. I really want to see blockchain go far very, very soon.
It's just going to take longer than people expect. Disruptive technology, it takes longer than you would think for the normal person to start accepting it and adopting it.
And I think that's our role, apart from, obviously the fact that you're a huge influencer, we keep using that word, but you're a public figure, whether you've been doused with accusations and threats and abuse, or whether you're seen as the golden boy, you're still a huge influencer. And that's part of the education, as you say, we're bringing it to the people. That's also part of what our role here is, or we see our role with Crypto-Clothesline podcast, because we saw that a lot of women in the space, or we saw that there weren't very many women in the space, and that the ones that were there weren't getting a lot of airspace because there were so many, white boys talking about Lambos to the moon. So we were really committed to wanting to speak to more people on an authentic level about the changes that they could see coming into effect in the world as a result of crypto and blockchain.
And I think you guys are doing a great job. I personally love the podcast. That's why I wanted to be on it, after I checked it out. And I do see that it's kind of a problem. The tech space has always been predominantly male. And I would like to see a lot more females enter the space and feel comfortable being in the space. Obviously there's some problems with it being male dominated, but over time, I hope that does change, because when it comes down to it, males and females do think a little different, and it's so much more beneficial to have an equal distribution of them thinking about things and solving problems.
Yeah, I think that's a really good way of putting it. There's sort of, instead of having two train tracks which are parallel and heading in the same direction, that you've got these veering ways. You've got different ways of solving a problem or different ways of seeing solutions.
Mm-hmm. And I think females are much more open to different ways of solving problems that some men typically don't see.
I do want more women in the space, but I still want the separate toilets at events.
They actually, at my school last semester I was there, they merged the bathrooms in the library and they were all gender neutral. And it was a very weird experience. They need to keep those separate for now.
I actually think so too. Anyway.
I don't know if it's the smell of male urine or if it's the smell of those awful acidic chemical soaps that they sort of lounge around in the urinal. I know because I've had to clean them at school a couple of times.
I'm so sorry that I brought this podcast episode to this level.
Hey, I wanted to ask you super quick. Ivan, I'm getting really familiar now. What's your favorite quote? First thing that comes to mind.
My favorite quote is, I think it was Bill Gates. I want to get it word for word. I choose a lazy person to do a hard job because a lazy person will find an easy way to do it. That was always my favorite quote.
Oh my God, I love that quote too. He actually might have stolen that. Sorry, Ivan. Because I think it was Henry Ford had a factory. I don't know if you've heard about this. Or maybe it wasn't even Henry Ford. There was a car guy who was making heaps of cars, and he actually started watching his staff, and all of the ones that were cutting corners, he ended up giving management roles to, and he just basically sacked all the people who, weren't really, they're just doing what they were being told to do. But the lazy ones cut corners. They found faster ways to do it, more effective ways, and got it done better and faster.
That quote just kind of like summarizes my life. I'm a very lazy person, but I tend to get a lot more work done than the normal person, and it's because I'm so lazy. And I find ways to get it done much faster.
It's a catch-22. Let's put it down to Joseph Heller. He's really cool. I like the way he's brought that language into our world. And you mentioned suggesting that people read a couple of books on trading. What are your faves?
So my favorite one that I've read so far is The New Trading for a Living. And then a second one, I'm not quite through it yet, but I think it's been pretty good for, learning about the markets, not just emotions, but, the technical part of it. It's called Technical Analysis of the Financial Markets.
Does that apply to all financial markets? It's not just, these aren't specific to crypto?
No, there's actually not a lot of good resources specific to crypto. These are both definitely based on regular financial markets, but just the strategies in the different things you can pick up from them can very easily be applied to crypto.
There was a book that was suggested to me, Trading in the Zone. Have you heard about that?
I have it on my bookshelf. I have not read it yet.
Okay, apparently that's a fabulous one to get out of emotions and just to get into that sort of meditative state.
Yeah, and then the last one I have here that I'm waiting to read, I want to finish Technical Analysis of the Financial Markets, is Reminiscences of a Stock Operator.
Oh, okay. I've written those down. Awesome.
Okay, well, do you have anything you would like to add to the interview, Ivan? Anything you would like to say before we go?
I just want to say thank you for having me on. I love being on podcasts and, sharing my story, and especially now, talking about some of the things that recently occurred. It makes you feel better about it and helps get things off your chest. So just want to say thank you for having me on.
Oh, you're welcome.
Thank you for coming and joining us.
Ivan, we have a real problem with closing interviews because we love talking so much. We're like, no, that's not the end. It can't be the end.
Well, once you get started with these things, they keep going because, when I'm streaming, I find myself doing the same thing. I'm like, I'm going to do a 20-minute stream, and I look at the clock and it's like 45 minutes. And I'm like, I can't believe people are still here listening to me. I really like what you guys are doing, and I think that I'll definitely be able to help you guys get some traffic and increase the awareness.
When you said people are always trying to use you as influencers, and I was like, oh shit, that's us too.
No, see, this is the kind of thing that I love to do. When I say that, I mean, like, people buy a coin and then they message me about it. They're like, look at this coin, it's going to do so well. Like, they're using you at the end of the day, they just want you to talk about it. Whereas something like this, or even educational things, I love to do that because a podcast like you're doing is really what's going to help new people get into the space and make them feel comfortable. Because you guys are very comforting. It's not like your typical, male YouTuber telling you to buy things. It's very friendly. It's something extremely unique.
Awesome. Oh, I'm so pink.
I'm not used to podcasts being so friendly. It was a really nice experience.
Awesome.
I was thinking about you too, because we don't know each other, obviously, but we were looking into your situation, as we do with all of our guests. And what really struck me, and this is going to sound really corny, but it totally struck me. I just went, oh my God, what if that was my son?
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. What if it's my daughter? Because bloody hell, she's desperate to get on my computer and start to mess around with crypto.
My parents were very worried because, when it all happened, the worst part about it was obviously the hacking, which was obviously a result of this. And I had to go out of town for like 10 days. My phone number was getting hacked. I couldn't even use my phone. I had to just essentially turn my phone off. I had no communication with anyone. And I just, my parents knew what was going on, but I felt so bad. I was almost putting them in a bad situation. They have people asking about me. They're worrying about my safety. And on top of that, I'm sitting there thinking, this guy's going to go after my family.
That's exactly right. And that's what Abheeti and I consider sometimes as well.
Even sometimes when we were getting into this space and we were talking to other women, because we effectively got into it, or at least I did. Amy Rose is on the other side of the country, but her story is a little different to mine. But, there was a group of mums standing around in the schoolyard and they're just absolute research queens and they just know their shit. And I was just listening and I'd been exposed to Bitcoin, I don't know, when it first came out. And of course I just shuffled on with my busy life and forgot about it. And then came back like you in about June 2017. And there are all these women standing around in the playground, literally at school, talking about Bitcoin and other things, of course. And what really struck me
was I said to them, oh my gosh, wouldn't it be great if we could bring this to people and talk to people and let more people know about this? And they went, there's absolutely no way we're going to go public with the fact that, we're involved in this, because somebody will steal our kids. Somebody will do this. Somebody will do that.
And that's what I was saying earlier in the interview. Once I put my face out there, a lot of people don't understand how scary that is in this space. That's a very, very, very big step.
Yeah, so that's why we found it. Our friends actually don't want to come on the podcast. Like people in our own circles who are really active in crypto, they're just too scared. It's a very real situation for people who are, I'm not going to say influencer, but I'm going to say influencers.
Once there's more regulation, you have more bigger names coming into the space, which we're seeing right now. That's what's going to help more people come out. Once you have like celebrities entering and you have, like senators and other things like that entering the space, and they're willing to put their face out there and say they have crypto, that will definitely comfort a lot of other people, in my opinion.
Well, it needs to feel safer. Yeah, sorry?
Isn't that just the same notion of having an umbrella and everyone standing under your umbrella until you screw up and then they want to jump under somebody else's umbrella like you've just been through?
That's essentially what happened, but I think it's becoming harder to find people to stand behind. The recent wave of, I guess we'll say influencer again, they're not the same. They entered in a very bad time in the market, and it's very difficult to get, people behind you right now, I would say. People are getting behind them for personality rather than their actual work. I guess that's like the point of an influencer. You'll follow them, not what they do.
We're so thrilled to have had you on the show today, Ivan. Thank you very much for joining us, for sharing all of your information and your experiences. And we're really, really excited to follow you in the future to see where your life goes from here.
Yeah, and thank you so much for having me on the show. I'd love to come back on maybe in a few months and do a follow-up.
That would be wonderful.
Okay. Thank you so much, Ivan. See you later. Bye.
Well, I know that we are copying a lot of criticism. Some people are saying that we're making it sound like he never did anything. I don't think we are. I think he owns it. I think we own it. But at the end of the day, I actually really like this guy.
I really do too. And I know a lot of people who are not perfect. In fact, every single person I have ever met is an imperfect specimen of a human being.
And I think the point that we brought up in part one comes back into play here is that, like, if you have a massive following, at what point are you responsible for their decisions? That constantly comes back to me. I know that I'm influenced by people that I really admire. I'm influenced by people like Cliff High. I like the stuff that he writes. I like the fact that we can sit around a dinner table, a group of girls, friends, and have a conversation about what Cliff thinks about this, and this based on his latest report. So at the end of the day, do I choose to purchase based on Cliff High's data or do I not? Well, actually, at the end of the day, I'm responsible.
And you definitely can't go out and blame someone who, regardless of who you're following, you can't blame anybody for the mistakes that you have made. You are absolutely 110% responsible for your mistakes. And what CryptoGat has done is he has actually stood by that belief and said, I did something wrong. It was my fault. And he actually made a public apology, and it's documented on the internet forever, a written apology saying, I did the wrong thing, I'm sorry.
I think it's really cool too that he was saying that he's able to focus on different projects now. He's reducing his stress levels, and mind you, we've been trying to contact him all this week and he's been traveling the whole week, so it sounds like he's still living a pretty intensely busy life. But he talked about blockchain for good. He talked about the way that non-for-profits were one of the biggest use cases and one of the best use cases for blockchain tech, because all the donations were actually transparent and you can see where your money is being spent.
And I think what we'll see from Ivan or CryptoGat, I think what we'll see is, him pursuing more ethical position in cryptocurrency and blockchain. I mean, he talks about, his favorite projects, but he also talks about not being in the public eye and being an influencer like he is now. He's going to focus on other things.
Yeah, I wonder about that, because once an influencer, it's hard to become non-famous, or infamous, as the case may be.
But I mean, he's posting all day. To focus on different things, you have to let something slide, right?
Apparently. Well, actually, we should tell that story. Should we tell that story really quickly?
Yeah, go.
So here we were about to release interview 1, and we've got a Telegram chat going on with Ivan, which is really cool. And, sometimes we don't hear back from him. We think, we'll just mention it again. Well, we were asking for a photograph, right? Because we wanted to make sure we had a nice photograph for each of the interviews. And he said to us something along the lines of, well, listen, I'm not in my hotel room right now. I've got it on my computer, which is in my hotel room. So I'll send you one soon. Well, soon came and went. And we finally got a photo of him, which any of us could have found on the internet, just this classic Google shot. And Amy Rose sent me a private message going, do you think someone's hacked his account? Do you think it's actually him we're talking to? Because anyone could have got that photograph. And so we talked to another brilliant brain who happens to be a mum at school, and she said, okay, get him to take a selfie. So we said, okay, let's do that. And we sent him another message. Hey, listen, just take a selfie. That would work perfectly. But you know what? He sent us a selfie. So it was him. It wasn't some hacker standing in and pretending to be CryptoGat.
Do you know what I did after that? I actually searched the internet for a selfie of him to make sure that he wasn't a hacker and that we were talking to the real Ivan, because, I get very paranoid about hacking. Particularly with anybody who's involved in cryptocurrency. I'm always aware that there's risk. And anyway, I do know I get carried away. And Abheeti, I'm sorry I took you on that down that rabbit hole of this isn't the real CryptoGat.
I think that was a great thing to do. And that was the reason that we got all of our guests last week to send us selfies. We'll be running a blog about that too.
We will. There's been an attack on this guy, and we talk about this because when you're in social media, this guy, he has decided to come out and, he said sorry, but he's been involved in something that the whole cryptocurrency community hates. Basically, pump and dumps, market manipulation, nobody likes it. And so he received hate mail, hate messages, hacking, and he went into hiding. He went deep down and you couldn't contact him. He hardly posted anything because he was afraid. And we talked to Dr. Sophie Henshaw, about the impact of bullying, the impact of cyberbullying, to the extent sometimes it results in suicide. So it's very, very serious and prevalent, particularly with young people.
Let's have a listen.
Sophie, can you tell me a little bit about how prevalent cyberbullying is and the effects on people?
Oh, look, it can be absolutely devastating. We know that cyberbullying can lead to suicide in the famous case of Charlotte Dawson, not that long ago, of course. And all sorts of other cases like children who have been bullied and been in the public eye, been bullied online. So many young people commit suicide because of this, or they even leave the country. People like AJ Rochester, who was the host for The Biggest Loser, who also happens to be one of my Facebook friends. She was horribly bullied when she was in Australia from her time on The Biggest Loser and also the paparazzi and stuff. So she moved to LA, and that's one of the big reasons why she moved. So it is a really life-changing experience.
If you're in the public eye, how do you go about dealing with the constant, 100 messages a day attacking you?
Oh my goodness, well, that's something in and of itself. I think to have a really good example of someone who deals with that type of situation with incredible grace is Clementine Ford. She's a very strong woman. She's a feminist. She writes for major news outlets and she's a published author. And she says some very controversial things about male-female relationships. And as a result, she gets a lot of bullying, a lot of hatred from men, and even there's been a Facebook set up against her. So she's really a very strong person. She copes with that very well. She writes about it very well. So I would highly recommend that somebody look at some of her writing for that kind of inspiration. Another person who was dreadfully bullied and humiliated on a world stage, of course, is Monica Lewinsky, who now has a platform talking about workplace bullying and shaming on a public stage. But I think you have to be really single-minded in ignoring that, because people do this thing where they project their hatred, their anxiety, their anger, their rage, their helplessness onto a convenient target, which they can do online. Well, not actually. I'll talk about that in a moment. They think they can do online, and get away with it under the so-called guise of anonymity. But the fact is, they cannot get away with it. And here's why. If you are a keyboard warrior, and you better watch out because it's not going to do you any favors. Oh boy, does it come and bite you in the bum big time. One of the reasons for that is if you have a social media profile or anywhere where you have written hate messages to other people online, the internet has a very long memory, my friend, and it can be found. Not only that, even if you delete it, people will take screenshots. And if they know who you work for, who your employer is, it's only a quick phone call or an email to tell your management that this is what you've been up to online and this is how you're destroying the reputation of the company. Not only that, there is an online tool where you can put in your name and for about $10, you can get a result about what your online reputation score is. It's called myonlinerep.com.au. And what it is, so you click online and then you click on the Get My Score button and you enter your details. So your name, you pay your $10 or whatever it is. It's not very expensive. And it will give you a score as to how you come across online. Twitter, Instagram, whatever it is, Facebook, Google reviews, all of that stuff, it takes all of it into account. And when I did the test, I scored over 97% for having an impeccable online presence, a reputation. You really have to be very, very careful about what you say online because unlike when you say something face to face, in the heat of the moment, in an argument, or even like verbal abuse or whatever, if you haven't been recorded, that stuff fades. No one knows about it. It can be hidden. Conversely, there is no way you can get away with anything like that online. Not really. Even if you're typing at midnight behind a computer screen and the room is dark and there's only you in the house, whole world will know about it. Here's my number one rule is never, ever, ever, ever put anything online that you would feel uncomfortable with being really on the front page of the West Australian.
Bullying in the past, I haven't really considered the fact that the bullier, the bully, is basically their message is contained for life. Like if they're having a conversation face to face, that bullying disappears into the ether, so to speak. But if it's online, then with a simple screenshot, you've got proof.
Well, you do have proof, but you still can't prove who it actually is. They're behind a keyboard and they're anonymous. It's like they've got the freedom to attack. It's coming at all directions from all people that are masked.
That's true, actually, and that's one of the things that also came up in the interview. He said, I made the choice to be completely transparent and to put my name behind who I was. But he said a lot of people who were doing the bullying were anonymous, so it was difficult to know exactly who they were.
And who your friends are or aren't.
Well, it's been an amazing journey, and I've learned heaps about pump and dump, about cyberbullying, about the effects of these things on the community. Even within our own Facebook feeds, we've had some quite heated responses to part one, including people saying that it's people like this involved in pump and dumps that are giving cryptocurrency a bad name, and that mostly people on the street are not going to be involved in crypto because of all this volatility and danger.
And it's going to be that way until it's regulated, in my opinion, because this is just the way of crypto. We need to do something to protect the cryptocurrency space and to protect young people and green people who are going into it. And that is a job for the whole community to get involved in. The job is not to throw attacks at influencers. The job is to step up and take responsibility for the cryptocurrency space and start to implement measures to make it mass adopted instead of throwing, weapons at people who you follow.
But the thing is, you could introduce regulation for those small fish. But what about the big fish? What about the guys that Martin McGuinty talks about? What about the JP Morgans and those banks which are creating havoc all the time and we just wear it as a populace? Where does regulation come in there?
Absolutely. They are a law upon themselves. So I don't have any idea of how to solve that problem. And you know what? I feel like the only way to solve the banking problem is to introduce cryptocurrency. And then deal with issues around cryptocurrency. I don't know. I want to say thank you. I want to say thank you to all our guests that we've had this week and that we've had last week to support the interview that we did with Ivan.
I want to say thank you to them, and I want to say thank you to our listeners. And I wanted to make it super clear that what we're really excited and passionate about here at Crypto Clothesline is talking to women and men who are working in the crypto and blockchain space in order to educate people in general about the application of these technologies and how it can absolutely change the world.
And if anybody wants to listen to the interviews this week, log on to our website. We have a full list of all our interviews. We've had Matt Morrison from Blockbox, we've had Nikki Ashby from High Profit Media, and we've had Dr. Sophie Henshaw from Henshaw Consulting.
We're really excited about getting your ratings and written reviews on iTunes.
Because we're also excited to protect you and your cryptocurrency. So we are giving away a treasure that you can have if you leave the best review on iTunes. And you know what? Even if you don't want to win a treasure, please leave us a review. We love reading it, and it's really supportive.
It is, and it means that you're responding to our request, and we're actually getting to have an interaction, have a connection, and have some feedback from our listeners.
So all you need to do to win the treasure is head to our website, www.cryptoclothesline.com/treasure, and read through the terms and conditions, subscribe, and follow the link to iTunes. So the treasure comes from coinstop.io, a premium supplier of hardware wallets in Australia. And then on the 28th of July, the team at Blockbox will be judging all the entries, and the winner will be announced a week later.
Thanks for listening.
Bye.
Hi, you've called Abheeti
And Amy Rose
at Crypto
Clothesline.
Leave a message after the
Beep. Okay, 3, 2, 1. Ready?
I'm willing to make a sacrifice. If you ladies would like me to come on to your show to actually educate your listeners in the truth about all this hullabaloo, hufflepuff, wobbly-gook that you are speaking, then I am willing to give up a little bit of my time for the education of the masses. But I would like you to understand that it is not appropriate to keep waffling on about all this Bitcoin crypto chain block stuff. It must stop. Well, if you don't mind me, making a pun, the buck must stop here. Well, there, wherever you are doing your recordings, you ladies.
Crypto Clothesline.